Hey y'all, hey, how's it going? It's your girl, Deborah the Queen, and look, it's another episode of Light the Path podcast. Oh, I'm super excited about this. When queens link up, okay, you know it's gonna be a good time. Listen, this is what we're talking about today. Let me calm down. First of all, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that right now. Follow on social media. And if you feeling fancy, go ahead and hit the notification bell. Now you won't get inundated with ding, 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 but you will be notified every time a new episode comes out right here on YouTube. And you're going to love this. Sometimes life changes overnight. A loss, a phone call, a responsibility you never planned for, and suddenly you are becoming someone new. Today's guest, Queen Avius Poole. Okay, the queens are linking up today to have a dope discussion that you're absolutely gonna love. Queen Poole is a kinship caregiver, grief educator, and strategist. After stepping in as guardian to her niece following her sister's passing, she began documenting what it looks like to carry grief, grow in faith, and rebuild with purpose. Through her work as the Hope Strategist, she creates space for honest conversations about healing, caregiving, and hope. Pathfinders, this conversation is tender, but it is going to be very impactful and powerful. Help me welcome Queen Poole to Light the Path podcast.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I'm so happy to be here.
Hey, I am so glad that you're here. When I saw the name, I said, okay, now come on, cousin.
Yes. The queens are in the house.
Yes, and this is definitely a much needed conversation. I don't think we talk about it enough. And so I just was so thankful to the connection. I got to give a special shout out to Ruth Buchanan because, hey, she's dope. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put Ruth's information in here too for y'all to connect with Ruth. Yes. One of the most dope guests that I had from last year, and we talked about adult friendships. And so for her to give me an alley-oop to get with Queen Poole, I am so thankful. So thank you, Ruth. Thank you for that. And
yes,
we love you. So look, I titled this, I was grappling with, I was going back and forth, but I put Raising Hope After Loss. And so when your life shifted, you like the title? I had a lot, I started getting too many words and YouTube was like, yes. I want to know this. When your life shifted from sister to guardian, what was the emotional reality of that transition people don't often talk about?
Yeah. The truth is you don't know what you're doing. And that's the reality. I did not have kids prior to my sister passing away. Her kids were my kids in life and now in death. And that was a reality shocker. So a little background about how I got my niece. When my sister passed away, the plan was always that I would decide where the kids would go. She left that totally up to me. Her oldest two kids, their father was very present in their lives. And so the whole time after she passed, while I was planning the funeral, he and I were talking about them going with him, all three of them. Well, a shocking event happened at her funeral. The youngest daughter, her estranged grandmother, showed up at the funeral and took her. Yes. And she called the police when we were driving to the repast. And when I arrived to the restaurant for the repast, the police met me there and accused me of kidnapping my own niece.
Look, I'm just gonna put myself on mute. What? No, this is not technical difficulties. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah. They accused me. They said, we have reports that you are trying to take At the time, they didn't have her name, but they just gave a description of her out of the state. And I said, well, that's not what I was planning on doing at all. But also, I have custody of her. Like, she's mine. So I'm not sure what's going on here. And literally, people were eating. We had just prayed, all of that. And I'm standing in the middle of this restaurant talking to police officers about this so called kidnapping. So we step outside of the restaurant. The grandma and the aunt pull up, and it's literally the entire repast was discussions about who she should go with. And the police, because I did not have my papers on me because I'm burying my sister, said that because she had papers, which we later found out were fraudulent, my niece had to go with her. And so I was standing there. At this point, the repast had pretty much ended. The whole family was now outside watching. We were all watching my niece get into a car with someone she barely knew. And so for 30 days, I was calling and texting and checking in as much as I could, as much as I was allowed to. And I was also lawyering up. So I hadn't even buried my sister, actually, when this happened. My sister's funeral was on a Saturday. She wasn't buried until Monday. And so Monday, my niece came to the burial with the estranged grandmother that she didn't know.
So much to say. We're gonna talk after this because yeah, okay.
Yeah. And
That's very
so,
interesting. What
yeah,
about the father? Was he anywhere around?
no. So these are, my sister struggled with quite a bit of things throughout life, but what ultimately caused her to pass away was kidney failure. And she had been on dialysis for four days out of the week, each week. And if anyone knows anything about dialysis, it's very tough on the body. It can be very tough. And in fact, it can shorten your lifespan. So research shows that anyone who is on dialysis, your lifespan is shortened almost by half. And so she was in need of a kidney, and I was actually in the process of trying to figure out if I was a match for her. But unfortunately, she had other health issues, and it made her not a candidate for a kidney, because when you're trying to get a kidney, you have to be kind of everything else has to be perfect in order for you to get a kidney. And so the father, he told my sister a long time ago that he didn't want to be involved, that he didn't believe it was her child and his child, and he had to go and she had to take him out for child support, get a DNA test and all those things. And so he wasn't present. My niece did not know him, and he wasn't present up until the time of the funeral. In fact, the reason why his mother was there, not him, is because he was incarcerated. And so not only were we dealing with you're giving your so-called rights over to your grandmother who doesn't know the child, but you don't know this child either. And it seems that you're not fit to raise her. You couldn't even be here for this improper transaction, if I can call it that, or transition.
We go talk afterwards. The Lord is holding my tongue because I am blown away. I'm speechless almost, because it's like you haven't grieved. You're trying to grieve. You're trying to, first of all, there's a level of responsibility that you have to do as far as the burial, getting things situated, getting all the details. And that's not even talking about grieving. This is the business side of death, right?
Logistics.
The logistics of it, how to, let's put closure. But grief and responsibility, it showed up at the same time. And then here goes somebody else showing up. How did you make space to mourn, still showing up for this process that has now, this is supposed to have been sort of smoother, right? Because
Mhm.
we're going in one direction, but then boom, here comes something else. How were you able to make space for mourning, but then still show up for your niece? Because now you can't necessarily mourn. I don't want to say fight, but in my case, I'm not ready to fight.
Mhm. Mhm.
How? Tell me how, Queen. How did you navigate that space?
Well, um, so I wish what I told you was the story. I wish it ended there, but it didn't. So I lawyered up, like I said, and it took me 30 days to get her back. So July 1st is what I deem Mom Tea Day, was the day that the judge said, no, she's the next of kin, but she's also the legal guardian of all three of these kids. And this child needs to be returned back to me. But in addition to that, I wasn't going into court thinking, oh, I'm going to raise my niece. I was going into court thinking she needs to reunite with her siblings. We're going to go with the plan that me and their father had already plotted out. After the announcement and I was told to, exit the court, my lawyer called me maybe about an hour later. And I'm sitting in an Airbnb that I'd rented not too far from the courthouse. My niece is playing in my stuff. She already has my high heel shoes on. She's just living her best life. My best friend, her and I are chopping it up. And I'm like, okay, I got to pack up. I got to get her to, so my niece and my nephew, my oldest niece and nephew are in South Carolina. And so we were going to head there. I was going to drop her off and I'm headed back to DC. My lawyer calls and she says, don't open the door. I mean, at this point, so we left the courthouse in a hurry. There was a lot of outrage about the results. And she said, don't open the door because they can serve you with an injunction. And I'm like, an injunction? She's like, yeah, they could serve you with an injunction to not leave Georgia until this is reconciled. And I was like, oh, no. I have an aging father I'm taking care of. I got work to get back to. Oh yeah, we're leaving soon, very soon. And so I proceed to tell her, my plans. Again, I had spoken to her when I hired her. I don't want to raise her. I want to make sure she gets back with her siblings. And so I repeat that very thing to her in this phone conversation. And she says, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that? This is what we talked about. She said, no, maybe you want to talk to the biological father about the custody or whatever, but legally she cannot be raised by somebody that is not you. You sought out custody. Her sibling's father does not have rights to her, and neither does her biological father. And so you would have to go into some kind of agreement with the biological father in order to do that. She said, so she's going to have to come with you. And I said, okay, well, she's coming with me. And so, again, this was more of a kind of three-tiered situation where I didn't plan on raising her at all, but that's how the Lord had planned it clearly. And, the grief and being able to mourn and throughout this entire process, the time wasn't there. I did not have time to think about the actual loss of my sister. In fact, during my grief therapy, which I went to maybe about a month after things had sort of calmed down, I remember just talking to my therapist and telling her, I held my sister's hand up into her very last breath. I was the one that had to make the decision to not resuscitate her. And all of those things, when we talk about the body, right? And what it means to be that person that is written on that board in that hospital. It's not a thing to take lightly. And I think we do it so much. And I can say that for myself. My sister had been in the hospital many times over prior to that last visit. And even when I got the call that she was in ICU and she was stable, I said, okay, she's going to pull through. And I think sometimes we think like that. We think, This is just another time. It's going to work out this time. But sometimes we have to realize that working out, healing also means that we go home to be with Jesus. And because of that kind of delayed reality check for me, healing and grieving and all of those things did not come until much later. In fact, I graduated grief therapy last year, August.
Mm.
Yeah. But I always say, you don't get a certificate in your grief because it's still constant. It's a different version, and it shows up whenever it wants to. And
Yeah.
so, with the process of grieving my sister, I'm actually writing a book. And last week, I actually wrote out her death on paper. And that was
Mm.
a whole nother layer for me. I've talked about it on camera. I've mentioned it in friendships and conversations, but to write it down, it felt like another layer of, man, this is real. This actually happened. But it also felt like resolve. And I think writing does that for us. Writing can be very therapeutic in those ways where sometimes things that we think aren't finite, writing makes it as such.
Yeah, especially being a writer, those thoughts also reignite the memories, right? So
Mhm.
you didn't have time
Yeah.
because of circumstances to actually go through that. So as you're writing it, you fully went through it
Yep.
in the present. You were present at that time. This previously you ain't had time
Mhm.
to fight.
Mhm.
How did or where did faith anchor you when everything felt uncertain and overwhelming?
Every part of the process. So when I got the call that my sister had coded the first time, I literally I booked a plane ticket and was in Georgia the next morning. And immediately I went in her room and I started praying. It was a week from the time that I arrived. It was a Monday, and my sister passed away that following Monday. That whole week, I organized prayer calls. My community came in full support, praying for her. I put them on speaker, so that she could hear them, that they were praying for her. I was reading scripture to her, all of that. And one of the things I've learned, one of my old pastors growing up used to say this: when you can't trace him, you have to trust him. And God is worth trusting because he has receipts. And I spent a lot of time reading the Bible in general, but Isaiah, well, we did a particular study at one of my former churches. And throughout Isaiah, the Lord will say, remember, remember, remember.
Yes.
And it is so important that when we go through hard times, uncertain times, things we cannot control, things that we did not see coming, we remember who God said he was, who he will be, who he is, and who he will be. And throughout that entire time, even now, right? Um, I know that I can trust him even when none of this makes sense. I know that it is going to be for my good and for his glory, and that all things work out for those who love the Lord.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a beautiful perspective because it's like if we don't have an anchor, we
Yeah.
gonna sink. We gonna sink. So I'm thankful that you were able to do that and that you had community to do that. How do you going through all this? I'm just trying to walk in your shoes, and it's hard. Okay, protect your own mental and emotional health while carrying someone else's healing journey because you also had to be there for your niece because now she's with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's in the motherless club. Me and my sister lost our mom in 2017.
Hmm.
And when I was reading just about people who had experienced that, it said that a loss of the parent is one of the most traumatizing things any person can experience. And I experienced it at 24. I couldn't imagine what it would be like at 6. And so, honestly, in the beginning, there was no journaling. There was no pretty aesthetic, this is the way that I'm going to grieve, or I'm going to process this. It was literally through tears, anger, you know, snapping at people. That's honesty, right? Like we have big emotions, and I think sometimes we don't want to talk about those things as if it makes us weak or, unlovable. But the Lord gave us those emotions, and so that means, number one, He can handle them. But if our nasty hostility, sinful selves that He died for, right,
Mm-hmm.
while we were yet still sinners, if
Yes.
He died for us in our most hostile state, surely He can love us in our most weakened state. And so, um, I'm always encouraged by verses like, He comforts the brokenhearted. And I knew that that was true for me. And I also knew it was true for my nieces and my nephew. And for my youngest niece in particular, who not only lost her mom, but separated from her siblings, moving to this new city. Yeah, she's hanging out with her cool aunt, but she only knows cool aunt. She knows me as we visit auntie, she visits us, and we go back to our mom, and she goes back to DC. Now I got to see this lady every day, and she's telling me what to do.
Right.
That's a real shocker. And I think today, obviously, by the God's grace, we are better and we're more entwined, and we're definite. Our hearts are linked, but it was not because I was journaling out the gate or anything. I was at the Lord's feet, screaming and crying and wondering, what in the world is this for?
Yes. How long has it been since y'all are together now? Full time.
July 1st will make 4 years. Yep.
July 1st, 4 years. Mm-mm-mm. That's
Yep.
huge. If someone just, this is my final question. Mm-mm-mm. If someone just stepped into an unexpected caregiving role and feels unqualified and overwhelmed, what would you want them to hear today?
You're not called because you're qualified. Very rare, if we read through the scriptures, is anyone ever qualified. Moses stuttered. He couldn't formulate a sentence, and he made that known. He said, my brother Aaron is so much better at this. And I think sometimes we can get lost in that, because the world is very much, do you have this degree? Do you have this experience? Do you have 10 years of work experience? Although I'm applying for a job that doesn't necessarily need that, right? And but with the Lord, you don't have to worry about that, because if He's called you to it, He's going to get you through it. And I've seen that. I know that in other caregivers, and I know that in my own story. And so I would say that's number one. Number two is, it's supposed to feel overwhelming. Most kinship caregivers come to their task or this calling in life through crisis. And there's nothing about a crisis that requires you to be prepared. There's no way that you can be prepared in a crisis. And so you're supposed to feel overwhelmed. You're supposed to feel like, I can't handle this. And I would encourage you to lean into that, because that's going to help you be able to think through what you actually need in that moment. And then the third thing I would say is, find you a mud buddy, and find them quickly. A mud buddy is somebody who is going to get in that mud and realize that sometimes sometimes it'll be quickly, you can get out of the mud. But most times, especially for kinship caregivers, you're going to be in that mud for a while, and you're going to keep sliding in and out of it, because it's just that messy. Especially with kids who may have experienced that, maybe they're being raised by a family member because of a drug addiction, or death, or whatever it may be. there's always a level of complexity there because they're kids. They don't come with a manual. They don't come with a way to raise them. And so being able to understand that this is messy and you're going to need somebody who understands mess.
Queen Poole. Woo! So good. Listen, let everyone know where they can connect with you on social media.
I am everywhere. So Instagram, Facebook, I am at Queen Avius. And then YouTube, I have a channel called The Hopeful Strategist. And so I talk about our story, but I also talk about tools and tips and places you can go for, help to find a possible mud buddy. I could be your mud buddy. But if you're a kinship caregiver, I definitely want you to be following me, engaging with me, shout out. I really want to build a community because you guys, none of us have to do this alone. We can all be in this together, but I think we got to talk about it more. And especially for Black people, we've always cared for family. And I think it's time that there's some light shined on there. So I'm everywhere at Queen Avius and then the Hopeful Strategist on YouTube.
So very good. Pathfinders, remember that sharing our experiences is not only empowering, it can help light